I am so excited because we have a show that is going to impact you in ways we can't even imagine. And we know that because technology isn't quite working here. And so we are going to try this out. I can't even tell if it's going live, but I'm going to hit the play video anyway. Here we go, Caroline.
Great.
Amazing. So usually if we're going to have a good show, the technology just completely fails. And that's what's happening this morning. So I see a few eyeballs here already. And I think we're good. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping here, and then we'll turn the time over to Caroline. And so just a heads up, we have our Sum Gigante program coming up in September 20th. It's a powerful program where we're going to go through the 12 journeys with you. I want to share my screen so that you can see this. Our goal is to help you to develop the operating system of a giant and to help you to really step into your fullest potential and rewrite the narratives that have been holding you back. So we're going to talk about that throughout our conversation today. But primarily over a 6-week period, we're going to sit in dialogue around the programming that you currently have that is keeping you in place. And then we've developed all of these tools to help you dive even deeper. So for our participants, they have lifelong access to this. So as long as we're around, they get access to this, the resource library here, where we have over, there's 14 notebook LMs, which are all AI-based notebooks to augment your experience. We have all of our documentation in there. And my favorite part here are the applications. And I'll go over just one that I created today called Say It Better, because sometimes I don't know how to say things properly without maybe throwing a swear word in or being upset with somebody. So I created this application to not only help me rewrite my messages so they're more civil, but also to train and teach me how to communicate in relationship with my employers, with employees, with kids. It actually trains you how to use nonviolent communication, the Gottman Institute's method for communication, and more, to actually dialogue with somebody in such a way that not only will you communicate what you need, but you'll do it in a way that they get what they need as well. So you're actually having a healthy conversation. So the Say It Better app is a brand new app that I created just to help me out. And that's going to be available to our participants as well. So I'm excited today. I'm going to go ahead and stop the share here to be hosted by Carolyn. My nerves are going a little bit because I'm in the hot seat. But Carolyn, I'm going to turn it over to you to launch us in and do the intros. Does that work for you?
Absolutely. I noticed the tech is a little jumpy, Nick, so maybe this is a lovely example of how our outer world sometimes reflects our inner world, right? Because you're normally in this seat. You're normally the person asking the questions, creating the conversation, creating the space for the many of us, and myself included, who have been interviewed by you, who've shared our wisdom. And I'm just delighted today that we have a chance to kind of turn the tables a little bit on the man behind the brand that is, the Wake Up with Giants and the giants and the small and all that you've done. So thank you for saying yes, first of all.
You're welcome. And I love that you wanted to do this just one-on-one with you and I, which gives us a chance to really dive deep. And I know your power. I got to speak with you in the UK last year, and to witness you on stage in front of all these people that really go into the dance that you did was beautiful, because you allowed people through narrative and story to just fully express in a way I've never seen. And we've worked together on some other projects. And so I feel honored to be interviewed by you, Caroline, because of who you are in the world. And I'm going to share your website across the bottom here for people so that they can dive into you a bit more as well. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. And you see, do you know what, Nick? So this is classic you, isn't it? You are so generous with your time, with your channel, and in how you take good care of us as guests. And I accept that it is a little uncomfortable to find yourself on the other side of it. And really, what today is about is a different forum that you and I are going to create for you to share a little bit deeper on your own wisdom and your own perspective and how you came to kind of do the things that you're doing in the world and the people that you support. So, so maybe I'm going to kind of say a little bit about who you are, kind of, to me, by starters. And I'm really aware that a lot of people watching this know you already. But there are people who are either new to your community or they're watching this and experiencing you for the first time. So we kind of wrote a little piece, you know, so that I would, you know my paces through this part.
Yeah.
So maybe let's start there, and then I'm going to turn it to you. And I accept that there are just little blips kind of where the screen kind of goes off and on. And as long as it comes back in within a second, we'll just keep moving. Is that okay while we go?
Yes.
Yeah, because it just seems to just be sporadic and just for a nanosecond, and then it's fine again.
Okay.
Yeah, so everyone, introducing to our amazing guest, Nicholas Townsend Smith, to give him his full credentials. And one of the things I love about Nick is that, you know, he is a giant who goes first. And I think, Nick, while you spoke about how I have impacted you, when I think of you and I think about, you know, all that life has put on your path, you know, if you've ever played the transformation game, you know, they talk about pain on the path and how do you use your pain on the path, both for your own kind of, to further your own journey and that of others. And, you know, the more I experience your work, the more I see how your experience of anxiety and burnout and breakdown and trauma, it's really kind of, would it be right to say it left you with a mission? Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a mission that really speaks very deeply to you, to help others to rise, to reclaim the power that they even forgot they had.
I think that's accurate. I mean, it woke something up in me that I didn't know was there. And it's pretty recent in the last 15 years that came up, because prior to that, I was just living.
Okay. And so as the creator of 12 Journeys and the transformational framework that you have, and indeed the more recent AI tools now that's supplementing that, maybe can we just start there and start with, you know, like, where did it begin for you 15 years ago? And what was the awakening that led to you going, this is not just about me, but this is about a contribution now that I can make to others so that they can get a shortcut through whatever they're experiencing or get unstuck? Because I know you use that language quite a lot.
I do, because that's where I was. And so 15 years ago, the market had just crashed. Businesses failed. I was foreclosed on. I was in bankruptcy. I was getting food at a welfare center in Salt Lake City. Life was challenging, and I took it personal. So for me, it was about who I was and why is this happening to me? And, you know, and I was waking up to the idea of taking ownership. I had gone through a course called Impact Trainings. And I think it was 07 or 08 that I went through Impact Trainings. And that really opened me up to coaching and the possibility of coaching, because they really had me dive deep into who I was and how I was showing up and how that was impacting the world. And prior to that point, life just happened to me rather than me being the creator of life. And so I decided I wanted to become a speaker and trainer, and I had no experience of it. And I spoke in November of 2008, after things were starting to fall apart. I spoke and I did a training around automations and habituation. And somebody saw me speak and they said, you need to meet this man named Steve Hardison. And I didn't know anything about him. And so I reached out to him, and he happened to call me when I was in the parking lot of the welfare center to go in and get food for my family. And instead of going in, we talked. And we talked for about an hour, and this man just really helped me to see the value of me at my core and who I was and how that impacts everything. And I remember asking him the question, can you? And he says, yes. And I said, how can you say yes if you don't know what I'm going to ask? And he says, there's nothing you can ask that's bigger than me. I can do anything. And I don't remember what I was going to ask, because that statement, that response kind of threw me off. It's like, what do you mean you can do anything? That wasn't possible for me. I didn't believe that about myself. And that questioning, that line of questioning of, is this possible for me, really opened the door for everything that followed, the book and And it was my personal journey before it was a journey for others as well. Does that make sense?
Mm. Can you say a little more about the impact of that statement? If there's nothing that you can ask me, what was it? There's nothing that you can ask me that I can't
That's
do.
bigger than me. Yeah.
Bigger than,
Yeah.
right.
I can
Okay.
do anything.
What did that
Here,
open to you?
well, I was feeling like I was reacting to life,
Yeah.
that I didn't have a say in my life. You know, I didn't want my house to be foreclosed on. I didn't want to be in bankruptcy. I didn't want to be getting food at a welfare center. So to hear somebody say that I can do anything, but not as just a statement of arrogance from their part, as a statement of that's possible for you too, right? So for me, it opened up the possibility that I could do that, but I didn't know how, because we didn't have enough time in that conversation to really deep dive into how I was going to do that. And it opened up my mind to start thinking, is that true?
Okay.
Is this real? Is that really available to me? Because the way I am right now, I don't feel like that's ever going to be a possibility. But it had me start asking questions about my life, and to really reflect on who's in the driver's seat of my life and how do I want to move from here. And that became the seed of the giants and the smalls when I wrote that book. Do you want me to share a little bit about that, or do you want to go another direction?
Just before we go to the book, because
Yep.
I just love this book. I guess what I'm struck by is this is the power of a single conversation. You said it's a 1-hour conversation.
Yeah.
At a moment in time where, like, a lot of people might not have listening for that type of conversation.
Yeah.
Right? You're queuing up for food for your family.
I'm busy surviving, right?
You're busy surviving. The phone rings. And it's this man that through the conversation starts to speak possibility.
Yeah. And he never asked for anything. He didn't make a request that I coach with him. He didn't ask me to follow him. None of that. He just purely sat there in service of me without any regard of where that would go from there for him. Yeah. It was just, let's talk about Nick and what's going on in his world and what's possible for him from all of this, which I'd never experienced that before. Everybody had an agenda for things. They wanted something from you. People don't do that, right? They want something, and he didn't.
Well, he wanted to connect with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
He wanted to create space for you to speak. He wanted to be in receipt of what it is that you wanted to share.
And he was fully present for that. And if you know anything about Steve Hardison, his clients pay him $200,000 a year to sit with him in conversation, or, you know, $10,000 for two hours of conversation. And here this man was sitting with me at no charge, right? And no possibility of paying him at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there was no thought of that. It was just serving.
Okay. But something in that conversation opened up something for you.
It did.
The other-centered, self-giving Hugh Jacobson is just saying, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah. So tell us about what it opened up.
Well, the questioning was a big thing, you know, and I know now from the research of how powerful questions are, because the brain hates unanswered questions. And it really matters what questions you're asking, because I could have easily asked, why am I a failure? Why do I suck? Why is life always so hard? And my brain would go to work and say, let me tell you, here's all the reasons why your life sucks. And it would anchor that in, and I would probably feel shame, but I didn't go that way. I started to ask the question, and this is where it stemmed from, is so that conversation became the seed. And I was driving to work in Park City for my brother, who lives about an hour from where I'm at. So my commute was about an hour in each direction. And I was listening to Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. And I thought I could write this because it's a simple metaphor, very powerful message. And I thought this is really cool. I could do this. And I thought, what could I write about? And I saw these mansions on the hill and I'm like, why are they living such giant lives while I'm feeling so insignificant and small? And so that seeded the idea of the giants and the smalls. Did they inherit that? Was it given to them? Are they just lucky? Can I do that? And all the questions I asked myself in that are in the book, The Giants and the Smalls. They're the questions that Rit, the character, asks. Why are there giants? How did they get so big? Can I do that? And I noticed in myself, I had all of these belittling thoughts and questions of, you could never be that. You will never do something like that. Or who are you to think such big things? And so that started to spill through me. Was this book just downloaded? And a lot of authors talk about this. It's like you're just trying to capture it. It's not like you're creating it. You're capturing it as it downloads, and you're just trying to do whatever you can. And so I had a little voice recorder where I would capture this, and then I'd go home and share with my kids. And they're like, I want to be a giant. And it really opened up even more in me of, okay, how do I now teach my kids how to be giants without entitlement, without this idea that you have to inherit it or get lucky? And I wanted to find out, is it really true that we all have that in us as a possibility? And so I started writing the story from there. Is like, how do we go from living a small life to living a giant one? And the metaphor, I didn't realize how much was in the metaphor until years later. I wrote it in 2009 and didn't publish till 2020. And the 12 Journeys didn't come out until last year. So they're pretty recent.
And as I'm listening to you, Nick, it sounds like there was an inner shift that was occurring kind of as you were stepping into a different type of questioning, as this book was, being written through you and communicated to your kids. It sounds like that shift from, all this is happening to me. I'm at the behest of life, and that curiosity somehow created a gateway to a different way of viewing either your existing circumstances or indeed the circumstance of other people. As you looked at these mansions on the hill and wonder, oh, how did they do that? How is that possible for me? It sounds like there's an inner shift that's occurring at the same time.
It definitely was. And it didn't happen overnight. So it wasn't like I had a conversation and then all of a sudden I'm changed.
Right.
Because for the next 15 years, I've been on a journey of figuring out who I am and what gift I get to bring to the world. Because socially, we're measured by the house, the cars, the accolades, the books, and all these things. And so initially, I think I came from that because that's what I knew. But eventually, it evolved into what is my unique gift that I can give to the world in my way. And it didn't get better. Actually, things got a little worse. In 2017, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder. They told me I had complex PTSD from development, that they tried meds. I hated the medications because they made me feel like a zombie, and I hated that feeling. So I had to find another way to manage my emotions. In 2019, I got divorced after 17 years, and that really threw me into a spiral of darkness, and I needed something to keep me here. And so I picked up the book again. The book had been collecting dust. I wrote it back in 2009. I learned some of the principles, and then going through these experiences, it collected dust. I did nothing with it. And so in 2019, I picked it back up and started paying for the illustrations one at a time, and slowly kind of grew out of that depression and anxiety. And I've learned the 12 journeys are the journeys I went on to be able to manage everything that goes on in me in a healthier way. And so that's what I'm sharing today is what I've learned along the way.
Okay. And so this, the kind of the main character in the book, Rit, is he autobiographical?
Yeah, I would say yes, because when I wrote the story, Steve was the giant and I was the small.
Okay.
And so Rit is me in the book. And then the giant is whoever I hold as a position of, I would like to be that. But the evolution of it is, this is each of us, is the small in each of us, and the giant is our potential, not
Beautiful.
somebody else or not some measuring up. It's just who are we capable of?
Yeah. Oh, so I have the book here, right? And
Yeah.
you have it behind you. And it is, firstly, it is so beautifully produced and curated and illustrated. But when I was looking at it this afternoon, because we should have said at the beginning, you're in the US and it's 9 a.m. and I'm here in Dublin in Ireland and it's 6 p.m. and Sunday is nearly over. And in fact, there was a concert started outside my window about 20 minutes ago, which I'm really glad it seems to have passed somewhere else. But I love the way this book begins. And if you don't mind, I just want to read it, because again, for people who are experiencing you for the first time, or it's been a while, it is just it's so beautiful, because it begins with, beyond the night sky and further than the tiniest star, past the darkest part of the heavens, is a world so big it would make our earth look like a single grain of sand. The inhabitants of this great sphere lived strange lives that were to a certain degree like ours, but the more curious thing about them was that some were giants and many were smalls. And the giants and the smalls lived amongst each other and shared the world as so many of us do. They breathed the same air, had similar opportunities, and in many ways were alike. However, they were massively different in size. And of course, then we get introduced to Rit, and we follow his journey. And I guess what I'm curious about, Nick, is there a part in the journey that for you if people only dipped into this book, if they only remembered one part of it, like, what would it be? From where you sit today, it's 2025, it's years later, it's years post-download and post-release and all that you've done since. But because you say in it, giants are giants and smalls are smalls, and that's the way it will always be.
Okay, so what would stand out?
Yeah.
Would be this. I mean, that statement, giants are giants and smalls are smalls, and that's the way it will always be, is what we tend to believe about ourselves when it comes to our potential. We think, oh, they're special. There's no way I could do anything like that. I'll always be a small in my world. And so the part that stands out the most to me is what happened to me in that parking lot. Is somebody slowed down enough to put me on their shoulder and stand up and show me what's possible. And the emotional side of that is coming up in me, is that awakening to possibility is like unpopping a popcorn seed. You can't put it back in the seed once it's popped. And so when he opened up and showed me my potential, Steve Hardison, that I couldn't unsee what was shared that day. And it opened up something in me that shifted the whole direction of my life and where I put my attention. And if I were to speak to somebody, it's like, I wish you could see who you are. Like what's possible for you. Can I read a poem?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
So this will speak to what I'm saying here, and you'll see and hear the image. If you could see you the way I do, you'd humble at the sight. You'd never have another fear of if you'd be all right. You'd step into your greatness and help the world to see that life becomes amazing when you be who you're meant to be. Yet out of prudence and smallness, we choose to please the world. And instead of the success that we deserve, we find our plans unfurled. That's so not fair to who you are and what God made you for, because you were made to change the world. Yes, that's what's at your core. So don't play small in this incredible world where you can be anything you dream. You're a giant, and that's what's needed despite how things might seem. Step into your greatness and let it grow. The world's waiting for your light. It's needed more than you'll ever know, so go after it with your might. See your power, lean into it. I can't wait to see you lift. This is your purpose, your life's true path, to inspire others with your gift. And I feel like so many of us, and this is why the line is so important, are playing small in a world where we could be giant or small. Many of us are playing way below our potential. And if we could just see it, it would open up the possibilities in our world to do more. And that's where I think people get stuck, is they don't want to even explore it, because who are they to do anything great? Like the quote, "It's not our smallness that we're afraid of, it's our greatness." Marianne Williamson.
Yeah.
Right? Who are you to play small?
Yeah. And I think it can be easy, can't it, Nick? It can be easy to think that we only have to choose once. Right? Whereas my experience of this conversation is that actually it's not just choosing it today, it's choosing it every day, right? And that sometimes, the story in our own head, or the civil war that can sometimes go on between, our 2 ears, right?
Yeah.
Can cause us to choose against ourselves, against our inner giant. Because as you rightly said at the very beginning, the giants and the smalls, it both exist within us too. It's not just the external, right? and internal. And, and I often find myself even in situations where I'm doing something that's different. It's a different version maybe of what I've done before. It's at maybe a bigger scale than what I have done before. And sometimes some of those old stories, that at times feel so comfortable, they just come back up for a bit of a chat. And I have to choose again, right? And I have to choose again. And then there's a point at which I stop choosing, because it just becomes the way that I, can show up, or the gap
becomes automated.
Becomes so small that eventually it gets to automation. But there's a journey to get there, right? Some of it can be kind of quick and so transformational that we shed that old skin and it is simply gone. And then for others, there's more of a journey kind of, to get to automation. Actually, it's a great way of putting it, because it feels like the inner algorithm will always find that path that has been worn so much in the past, in the not good enough, or the I can't, or the who am I, or they're better, or, whatever the language is that we might use to describe this in our own minds. Like, what do you say to people who find themselves, bumping into that story again and again, and kind of feeling that inner frustration of, oh, I thought I had done this. I thought I had done the work.
I should know better by now, right?
Oh, yeah. I know, particularly those who coach and who hold space for people when we know stuff, technical terminology, and then feel, somehow it's weaponized against us that we haven't known because we just got caught in our own thinking. What do you say that people who experience that stuckness and frustration, and it can form a bit of a loop?
The one thing that I love to do is to acknowledge what they're experiencing. So to not get rid of it at all, to acknowledge it as that's what you believe right now. And it's okay to not be okay where you're at right now. The intro to the book says that beyond the night sky and further than the faintest star is a world so big. The reason for that is it's a reference to the brain. The brain is so incredible that it will create anything you can imagine. And it's capable of living two lives, small and giant, simultaneously. And it can have multiple personalities if you want it to. Right. But so what I do with people is I slow down with and say, let's see how your brain works, so that if you can understand that, then we can also understand that it's not faulty equipment, it's faulty programming. The brain is able to store 2.5 petabytes of information, one human brain, which is enough to store the internet twice. And the brain has one job and one mission, and that's energy conservancy. It's to conserve energy in whatever way it can. So it automates, and it has what's called the default mode network, which is why 95% of our thoughts are automated. Only 5% are original. And 70% of those thoughts, of 50,000 to 70,000 a day, are negative, because one, it wants to survive, and two, it wants to conserve energy. And so it automates things to conserve energy. And when people understand this, it's not a faulty brain, because people have had half of their brain removed and they still function. And there's a man in France that at 40 years old started complaining of headaches. And when they did a brain scan on him, he had a 10% mass of brain tissue filled by 90% of cerebral spinal fluid. And he was living a normal life with 10% of a normal human brain. So the capacity of the brain to adapt is incredible. So when people can understand how incredible their brain is, then we can start to look at how do we become aware of the stories non-judgmentally, because that brain will automate anything you give it for efficiency, positive or negative. It doesn't care. And if you only had 10% of a normal brain, you could still function. So let's look at the program, what was programmed in. And then we take a gentle look and a curious look at where that programming came from. You know, for me, I was raised number 9 of 11 kids. My dad passed away when I was 2. My mom never remarried. She had mental challenges because of her upbringing and her traumas. My dad had his own version of those that were handed on. He was raising kids at 8 years old when his dad abandoned him. So both of these dynamics get handed off and inherited by us kids. And now we get to decide what we do with it. And when you have compassion and understanding for that as the foundation of your learning, then you can start to gently nudge yourself in a new direction. Do you want to carry that forward? What if your programming was just programming, but it's inaccurate? So one, you understand the capacity of the brain, which is the first journey that we go through. And the second journey is awareness. And that's waking up to the patterns that you have. And when people see those patterns, a lot of times that awareness is enough to change it forever. It's like the putting on the shoulders. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It's like my experience of that is kind of realizing that I've been believing something that actually may not be true. So I have a habit of believing the pattern, which then, you know, ingrains it even deeper.
Yes.
And it's kind of breaking the habit of believing that, pressing pause on the programming.
And we have a guard system called our neurobiology, which is it's really the neuroregulation. It's the nervous system firing chemicals to keep us protected. And our emotions, which are something that AI can't replicate, are things that can hold us in place as well. So our third journey is the journey of grief, which is learning to navigate heavy emotions. So if you think about the brain as in a box, a black box, and it will never see light. It will never hear a sound. It will never smell a smell or taste a taste or touch anything. The brain will never experience that because it's in a black box of darkness encased in your skull. And it can never have any of those experiences until it interprets the information coming in and turns that into a thought or a chemical response. Think about that. So every experience we have is coming from a black box that is just predicting and interpreting everything that's going on around it, including our past. And so if our programming was put in there, the black box is going to go ahead and interpret that based on past experiences and say, this is going on, let's protect you. And it's going to fire anxiety. It's going to fire depression. It's going to fire those sensations. And in a lot of cases, many of us are so overwhelmed by those, we just go back to our automations. So we don't even navigate our emotions to start to change those because it's so costly, for one, very uncomfortable. And that's what I've had to learn to do, is to be with not the emotions, but the affect and sensations, because when you can start to label the sensations in your body, that means that you're able to get to them before the brain puts a label on it or interprets it. And therefore you can start to shift the narrative that you tell around that experience. Does that make sense?
Because you know, as you're talking, what's occurring for me is, you know, the P in ChatGPT is probability. All right.
Okay, I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe I think I'm right in that, but I'm not.
I haven't heard that, but that sounds awesome.
It's for probability, right? And we marvel. Well, certainly I marvel. I'm not going to tar you at this, but perhaps it's true for you. I marvel at ChatGPT's ability, you know, to make connections out of seemingly unconnected pieces of information and give it back to me in a synthesized way. And that's kind of, it sounds like that's what you're describing is your understanding of how the brain works. Like it's the black box, it gets fed, prompts.
Yes. Yeah.
Like we do, right?
No different. Yeah.
And the more prompts it's fed, the more likely it is to kind of come up with a similar conclusion in every time, right?
And depending on the power of the prompt
Right.
dictates the power of the output. So what you put in determines what's going to come out, right?
Okay. And so it's Viktor Frankl, isn't it? So in between stimulus, the prompt, and response, the feeling, the emotion, the output, there is a choice.
Yes.
Right?
And if you look at neurobiology, in between neurons, there's an axon, and then you have the synaptic connections, which look like your fingers. And then there's a gap between that and the next neuron and the dendrites. And in between, it has to jump a gap to get to the next neuron. And if that neuron fires, it fires all or nothing. And the more it gets used, it gets supported and myelinated, which automates it to where you don't have to think about it. It becomes your default mode. But in between that gap, that stimulus and response is choice every single time. And if we can't slow down with it, then we get into our automations, right?
Right. Yeah. And what do you say to people, Nick, for whom that choice, that doesn't appear to be a choice?
Yeah.
It doesn't appear to be a choice between the stimulus and the response, the program and the sensation.
Yes.
Because it all feels like it's in an automated pattern.
It is.
Feels like, back to the beginning of this conversation, I'm at the behest of that situation.
Yeah.
And so what do you do with people to kind of slow them down to that? I think Deepak Chopra called it the field of possibility that's in the gap between the thought, the gap between the synapses you've just described, that we've got to jump across.
Yeah. So the first thing that I'll do is acknowledge what is. So our fourth journey is the journey of acceptance, which doesn't mean you love what is, it just acknowledges what is. And so when you can acknowledge what is, you no longer are in resistance to what is. You could fight it, but there's no need for that. If we can acknowledge it for what it is and where it is at this time, then we can start to take a look at it. You're angry. One of the, if somebody says that to you, you're angry, well, they've acknowledged your emotion. Well, the challenge with that emotion is that up to 10 seconds before you're consciously aware of a thought, research has shown that 10 seconds prior to that thought firing and your conscious awareness of it, they know what thought you're going to have and when you're going to have it. So that's how automated our brains are. It doesn't mean choice is gone. It just means it's so efficient that it's already firing your response 10 seconds before your conscious awareness.
Right.
And in addition to that, it's already interpreted everything that's going to follow, and it's predicted what's going to happen before conscious awareness. And so the most gentle thing you can do is to not cause additional harm for your automations. My favorite definition of forgiveness is to not cause additional harm. So if you go into an automation, is now not to shame yourself because you got automated, or to judge yourself or justify yourself because you got automated. The challenge now is to say, okay, what was the automation, which is awareness? I think it was Nathaniel Branden that said that awareness is the first step in transformation, acceptance is the second step, and I would say the third step is adaptation. As Charles Darwin says, that it's not the most intelligent or the strongest that survive, it's the most adaptable to change. And in order for us to change, we have to adapt. And so you have to be aware of it, accept it, and adapt it. And so when they become aware of it, if they add shame and justification or judgment to it, they go back to their automations, because who are you? This is the learned helplessness that Marcia talked about. Who are you to change if you're shameful? Who are you to change if you're broken? So those judgments and justifications keep us from learning, and learning can only occur in the discomfort. So if we can disrupt the fighting what is, so acknowledge it, wake up to what it is that's an automation, not judge it, then we can start to sit with the emotions of that automation and really feel the sensations, not the label of the sensation. An emotion is already labeled and packaged by our brain by the time we get it. And so we call it anxiety. But what if it's not? because they say that the emotional language that a person has, if they label things as black and white as anxiety and depression, they're millions of times more likely to suffer from severe disorders than somebody that has a vast vocabulary of their emotions. You might be feeling a blend of anxiety and depression and joy and excitement or sadness, and not just one thing. You might feel a combination of those things, and your ability to speak that helps soften the impact of those emotions rather than a rigid label. Help me to know if I'm being clear here.
Yeah, I guess I'm probably computing what you're saying, which is kind of very eloquent in terms of how the brain works and the mechanics of things. And yeah, taking butterflies to caterpillar, talking butterfly to caterpillar, exactly, Hugh.
Yeah.
And I'm in my head going, okay, what's my version of this?
Yes. Yeah.
If I'm going to take a really simple example.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
So, because sometimes while acceptance sounds like, oh yeah, I just have to accept it. It can sound like a real, like cool and easy thing. But in acceptance, we have to articulate something that might say something about ourselves that we don't want someone else to know.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right?
There might be an identifying of a behavior or trait that is like, oh, I don't want people to think that about me.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think that about me, because there's an inner judgment that's kind of almost this like little precious secret that only I know about me, but it can come out and it can wreak havoc in what it is that I'm doing, right? Yeah. And so as you were talking there, I was just reflecting on like one of the things. So I used to have a fear of water.
Yes.
And by that, I mean up until about 6 months ago, and really up until about 3 weeks ago, and probably given certain circumstances, I really am it's still there, right?
Yes.
And I remember, talking to my own coach about this in January, and I said to him, I'm afraid. I don't know what we were talking about. I said, I'm afraid of water. And he goes, no, you're not. And I said, no, I am. And he goes, I don't think so. And I said, no. When I was 16, I was learning how to kayak. And in learning how to kayak, out on the open sea, you have to learn how to do what's called an Eskimo roll, where, you have like you sit into your kayak and then you seal the whole of the kayak with this kind of like a tarpaulin that no water can get in. And then there's a way of kind of turning your oar so that you go underwater, you submerge, and you come back up again, right? So there's a combination of physical strength and, breath control and all of that. And while I was learning this, I got stuck underwater. And by the time I came back up, I was really, really terrified. And this was probably, I don't know, 1990, 1991. And I was in an Irish college at the time, which would be a 3-week kind of away from home stay to kind of immerse yourself in the Irish language. And this was an activity one afternoon, right? So they had said to me, look, don't go back into the sea, because the dominant logic at the time was that when you have a fright, that you don't then put yourself back, in the tiger's eye. Very different to how we think about it, today. Yeah. And so like I was at a stage where I wouldn't even get my face wet in the shower. Wow. So I wouldn't even, up until very recent, I wouldn't even, that level of the unpredictability of the water on my face really kind of brought up a lot of fear for me. And I was saying this to my own coach, and he said, yeah, but Caroline, you live by the sea. And I said, yeah. And he said to me, I bet you buying a house by the sea is much more expensive than buying one in land. And I thought, yeah, a fair point you make. And then he said to me, and you walk by the sea? And I said, yeah, I do. I walk by the sea every day. And I said, yeah, and I love that. And he said, so you live by the sea, you walk by the sea. Beautiful. You talk about the people who swim in the sea, and I would probably tease them a little bit in my own mind, be a bit judgy of them, but actually secretly I really admire that on a cold winter's day they'll get into the Atlantic and they will take their plunge, and I just really admire that they do that, right? Yeah. Yet I had this narrative of I'm afraid of the sea that was bigger than actually the physical, tangible steps I'd taken in my life to be as close as possible to water as often as possible. Yes. Right. And so what I began to see in this conversation was even though I had a narrative, quite a strong one, that was running for 35 years at this point, my actions said different. But it's
Mm.
like my brain hadn't caught up with my reality.
The
And so the
consciousness, right?
right, exactly. So I was doing things that was directly in contravention of
Yeah.
somebody who had a fear of water.
Mm.
And I love going out in boats. And so I was kind of confronted with, oh, this is interesting. My realities, outer reality suggests one thing, and my inner dialogue is running an old story that simply
Yeah.
hasn't yet got confronted with the reality, which is kind of my acceptance point. Because I was left with a choice there of which reality did I want to accept. The
Yes.
one that I had created through steps that I had taken, or the one that was based on a story that certainly was true in 1991 when this incident occurred, and that had followed through in things like, you know, I say, wanting to get my face, but want to be immersed in water, or my, right? Oh, the shadow government. Thank you, Marcia. So the acceptance in that case for me was, well, which story did I want to bring forward from that point onwards?
Yeah.
And the acceptance was actually that story is no longer true. Because the evidence of my life would suggest that I was somebody that's really comfortable with water. And I may have to build some skill in order to get confidence. That's different, right? Isn't it?
Well, let's shift a little bit here too. Okay. So the acceptance is beyond that. Acceptance. So the awareness might be that story's not true, but the acceptance is the acknowledgement that you have a narrative and a story that says a certain thing, and that it's automated, right?
Yes.
And so research shows, and I'll try and simplify this to what you're talking about here.
Yeah, go for it.
That and to honor time, I can't believe where the time has gone.
I know, right?
Are you okay for a bit? You tell me when you need to complete, and we'll wrap up. But we might go a little long. But the acceptance is the acknowledgement and the giving voice to, I have a narrative. It's automated.
Yeah.
That's it.
It
doesn't mean I love it. It doesn't mean I judge it. It doesn't mean I justify it. It just is, right?
Yeah.
So when I tell people in my courses, I say it is what it is, they get mad. What do you mean it is what it is? We're taught that it shouldn't be that. So the word should comes from owing a debt. I don't know if you knew that, but it's to owe a debt. So when we should do something, we owe a debt to whatever we've made up or whatever we've been conditioned to believe. And like she says, the shadow government, our shoulds are owed to our shadow government. They're debts we owe to some made up idea.
Right.
And so acceptance is just recognizing that there's a shadow government, that there's a default mode, that there's an automation, and it is what it is. And no amount of arguing reality is going to change the fact that you have a present fear of water. Now, the awareness comes in of the curiosity of, is that true? Where did that come from? Why am I still holding on to that?
Right. Yes.
And the preference of the and the brain is wired for automation. So if you think about laziness as nothing more than habituation or homeostasis or automation, that laziness isn't laziness, it's just the brain's preference to not burn energy. And the brain's job is to conserve energy. And so of course it's going to run the automation when you don't choose.
Right.
Conscious effort is very costly. So why would it burn energy to create something new when this old program runs fine and it's kept you out of the water? Right.
And I guess that comes back to what we were saying earlier, Nick. You know, it's not just a one-time choice.
Yes.
It's continually choosing. Because if I roll forward, I was in Portugal about 3 weeks ago for a long weekend. And one of the days, the sea was, I wouldn't quite say rough, but it was certainly animated.
Yes.
And the double narratives were running for me. And again, I had to choose. And it was like, okay, this is getting your face wet in the shower now. This is a different, it's kind of, we've kind of brought it up a level, right? Because now it's the
Yes.
sea and there are, significant waves and what might happen if I got in. And I really had to sit with myself and go, but I know I'm okay in water.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can be afraid here, and I can still choose, do I stay on the sun lounger or do I
You are exactly here, right? In the story,
Exactly.
you are able to. So imagine if I wrote the story that the small goes to the land of the giants, and he says, I have a fear of water. And the giant says, you idiot. What are you doing here? Don't you realize you're a small? Why are you in the land of giants? I hate you. You're shameful. And then what do you think the small's going to do in that story?
Well, he's going to stay small, right? Or even get smaller, I think, in this case.
And hide, right? And hide away and probably never talk to the giant again. And that's what most people do with their inner dialogue.
Yeah.
Right. And if you could just do what you did and say, hey, I'm a small, I came from the land of smalls. I have a fear of water. And your giant puts you on your shoulder and says, I can hear that. I have compassion for that. I have empathy for what you're going through. I can see why you created and the logic behind protecting yourself around water. And that understanding opens the room for you to say, hey, I wonder if I want to keep this.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. 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 Or what I want to create from here, what I want to do.
Right.
Even recognizing sometimes there can be, I kind of call it the inner civil war, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it really is between your inner small and your inner giant, and it's nobody else. It's
exactly.
It's not social standards.
And there's almost, sometimes I think, that we can normalize that's there's a level of all of us have that to a greater or lesser extent for different parts of our own lives.
That's it,
There'll
right?
be different trigger points. There'll be different frequencies and intensities, and whether the labeling of anxiety or depression or hyperactivity or whatever it may be, there is something very human, isn't there, Nick, in that state of being in constant choice around how we want to show up or in any given situation.
And it truly is ours to create with. This is a little cliche, but it's very valid, is that creation and reaction are the same letters. They're just arranged differently. And we are either reacting to or creating our lives. And the challenge of creation is it's very costly. Biblically, they say, by the sweat of your brow will you eat. Well, there's a reason for that. It's in that sweating that you grow. And it's in the costliness of effort that you grow. And it's not enough that you could just not do anything and just be lazy. The body atrophies. It's like you can't even sit still without the body going the other direction. So you either have to be moving forward to maintain what you have or move forward for growth. There is no sitting still.
Yeah.
And so to acknowledge that, it's if I have this behavior that's automated, that means I don't have to do much effort to have that run. So if I'm going to change it, I'm going to have to effort, and that's very costly emotionally, mentally, and the brain hates that. Yeah. But it hates it until it's automated, and then it loves it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do a lot of work with people. Talking about unconscious bias, and that's the principle on which it runs, right? That the brain will go to the fastest possible place to find the similar information and decide, well, if it looks like this, therefore it is.
It does a heuristic, right?
Pardon me?
It does a heuristic. A heuristic is a pre-programmed prediction of what's going to happen. So it's already run the program, and that heuristic runs. And it's why a baseball catcher can see the ball get hit by the bat, or a fielder, and he knows where that ball is going to land is from a heuristic. He's able to mathematically calculate and predict where that ball is going to end up before he doesn't have to sit down and do an equation and then run out to the field. It would take too long. So heuristics are pre-programmed predictions that we can run without thinking. And so our brain, when you understand the brain and how it operates, what it gives people is this knowledge of how to change it if it's no longer serving them.
Yeah.
We don't want to transform everything. There are a lot of things that serve us, but the things that don't are significant enough that they impact every area of our life. Like, we can't bring things into the world or create an impact in the world unless we deal with this inner world. Because like Carl Jung says, those are shadows or reflections of this. Like, everything out here is radiated from whoever you think you are in here. And our first job in the 12 journeys is to get in here. Who are you saying you are? And where did that come from? Is it true that you have to be this? Do you have to be a Republican or a Democrat? Do you have to love that sports team? Who told you that you have to do that? Do you have to be of this religion? Do you have to have this rule set? Where did that come from? Is it yours? Is that something you want to carry forward? Like, until people slow down with that, they're going to react to their lives. And then they're going to feel frustrated because they keep doing the same things, hoping for a different change from the rule set they never even chose into.
Right. And would you say, Nick, people who engage with your 12 journeys, would you say that's the biggest benefit that they get, that they start to slow down to, I suppose, the speed of their own programming, so that they get choice about which ones they want to, maybe change the tonality or indeed change completely? What do you say to that?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be the biggest benefit of the 12 journeys, is not what you create in the outer world, not even your impact, but your ability to sit with and be compassionate with and gentle with your own identity and who you say you are. And if something isn't serving you, to be able to navigate through it to create a new pattern and pathway. And that's where people break free, because we've been so automated in our stories, they think they're stuck. But even that's a story.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Primitive brains, motivational trying, avoid pain, seek pleasure, conserve energy. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Marcia. Yeah.
The brain makes up about 2% of the body mass. It consumes about 20% of the glucose stores in the body at a resting state. It's very costly just resting. And most of what we do is automated. 40% of our habits, 95% of our thoughts are repeats. They're just the same thing. And so for us to slow down with and be with a new way of being in the beginning is very costly, until we practice it enough for it to be efficient.
Right.
And the goal is automation.
Yeah.
That's where I help wake people up.
Brilliant. Yeah. And I guess it's like, there's a big difference, isn't there, between, I'm just going to use a random example, somebody who says, I am a smoker.
Yes.
Opposed to I smoke.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Or
I have a smoking habit, or
even though it looks like on the surface, it looks like, well, that's just kind of playing with language, but it's kind of moving people along the journey is what I hear, Nick, from that identification with those inner narratives. I'm the late one, I'm the not good enough, I'm the whatever.
Yeah. And if I'm that, I can't change it because that's who I am. So what's the point?
Yeah. So identity gets very fixed there. And when something is, I don't mean fixed as in mended, I mean as in it's concrete.
Yes. Yeah.
And so when something's dialed in, we tend to defend it when it comes under pressure, as opposed to, allow it to crumble, disintegrate, get curious about what else is possible, until we get that disassociation to I have a habit of.
In fact, in relationship, they say differentiation is the biggest thing that creates a healthy relationship, is our ability to separate our identity from that relationship.
Yeah.
Now, within ourselves, that dissociation, which is a gift, by the way, is our ability to separate ourselves from the identity, to be the observer. And we speak in narratives. The brain is wired for narratives. The first story ever written was the story of Gilgamesh, and it was a metaphor. The Bible is written in metaphor. All these books, even The Giants and the Smalls, is a metaphor. And now in the 12 journeys, we have 12 new characters and 12 new stories that are all metaphors for each of the journeys, because people learn in metaphors. There's a ton of research and science to support this because I want empirical evidence for change, not pseudoscience. And so, but those metaphors that we're telling, our identity is just a metaphor. It's how we explain ourselves to the world. And it's based on all these experiences we've had and interpretations by the brain, which is in a black box that has nothing other than what we give it. And it will never see the light of day unless it was cut open. It will never see the light of day. Yet it's out here imagining like we're seeing the light of day. It will never see this, right? So it's only metaphor. And that's what we're opening up with the 12 journeys is let's start to rewrite that story. But first, let's wake up to that story and let's see what you've been telling. And then let's show you a framework that will let you rewrite not only that story, but every single small story you have in your world that is living well below your potential.
Yeah, love it. And it kind of feels like in that, Nick, that it feels like we've kind of come full circle because now we're back in the metaphor of the brain in the black box that's projecting outward all of these things that appear real and the work that you do. And so if people wanted to work with you, like how do they get in touch with you and what do you got to say to anyone?
So the best way to get a hold of us and see what we're up to is go to my12journeys.com and click on the SG program. So there's a link on the top that'll take you in and explain the program. We've done over 300 interviews like this with experts. You can also go to Wake Up with Giants and learn about those. But I think the best way to do this is either go to my12journeys.com or DM me directly and we'll have a conversation. Much like Steve Hardison did for me, it's my gift to you. I don't need you to pay me for that conversation. We're going to dive deep into you. And if one of our programs makes sense for you, then we'll explore that. But otherwise, we just sit in service of you and your story. I do this because I want to put you on my shoulder now and do what was done for me in that conversation for you and really open you up to what's possible.
Beautiful. Well, I think I can't think of a better place for us to, I think, pause this conversation, Nick. I suspect we might, do it again at a future point. But I'd like to say thank you so much for agreeing to be a guest today on your own channel and for giving me the great pleasure of chatting with you in this way. And many thanks to those who've tuned in and given their comments and questions and reactions along the way.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate this. And it's, I could go on and rant for hours on this stuff. So it's just beautiful to me because it's really set me free. And now I want to show others how to do that for them. And so thank you for being willing to do this.
Pleasure.
Do you have any final thoughts on what you've heard today?
No, I think I can just testify to what you've said of, putting others on your shoulder. And because I have a very clear memory of being in a car with you and a couple of others as we came back from that event in the UK last year. And one of the people in the car was, talking about her anxiety and how she used language like it was crippling. And I'll never forget it. You were sitting in the passenger seat beside the driver and you just turned around and went, "Hey, that's your superpower." And it just totally changed, not just the energy in the car in the moment, if you recall that, but for that person who was a very dear friend of mine, the impact that single comment had on the way in which they think about something that had been, a challenging kind of friend, throughout their whole life.
Yeah.
And I saw the impact of just one sentence from you. And so I am really clear that people who work with you, who engage with you on this, they allow you to put them on, to be on their shoulder.
Thank you.
They will see something that is just like opening the fridge and seeing the Grand Canyon instead of the
they will
that you expect to see.
They will never be the same again.
Never,
in a good way.
That, that's even, I wasn't the recipient, but sitting in the car that day and hearing that, even it changed the way I talk to other people who might, talk about similar symptoms and conditions, that could be a superpower because that opened up a possibility.
I love that. We could go down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I love that.
I really, I really, really appreciate the work that you do. And I really encourage people who might be thinking, oh, they might be talking about me, to be in touch with you as somebody who can really hold a very strong space for their exploration. So
Yeah.
we're happy to leave it at that for today.
That's perfect. Thank you. And for everybody that's watching, thank you for being a part of this. The comments do make this amazing. They draw an additional element in. So we're grateful for that. If you know somebody that could be benefited or serviced by this show today, please share it with them. And if you're not following us on Wake Up with Giants TV on YouTube, go do that. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can see when we go live every single dang time. Look forward to hearing from you. So if a conversation would serve you, please reach out and we'll sit down in conversation, and you'll likely never be the same from that conversation. My goal is to break you free. So go make it a giant day, and we will see you in the next video. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you, Nick.